Every car has its ups and downs, but some cars were just downright disasters. From fiery explosions to poor engineering, these vehicles earned their spot in automotive history for all the wrong reasons, and starting with some that make you wonder how they ever made it to the road in the first place. 15. 1975 Trabant. First on our list is the 1975 Trabant, or as Time magazine once lovingly described it, the car that gave communism a bad name. And honestly, that's all you really need to know. But don't worry, we've got more. The Trabant, designed to be an alternative to the Volkswagen Beetle, had a two-stroke engine capable of a whopping 26 horsepower. That's right, just enough power to lose a race to a lawnmower. Its body is constructed out of Duroplast, a fiberglass-like material, and reinforced with recycled fibers such as cotton and wood. Oh, also, it smokes like it's on fire when driven. It doesn't have basic conveniences such as brake lights and a fuel gauge, but the Trabi, as it was affectionately known, does have its place in history. Thousands of East Germans drove these vehicles across the border after the fall of the Berlin Wall, and most of them left the cars in fields where cows literally ate them. Yes, ate the car. That's how natural the body panels were. We could go on about how bad the Trabant is, but you can see for yourself if you ever visit Berlin, Germany, as there are tours where you can drive around in one. Just don't expect air conditioning, or power anything, or anything. 14. Cadillac Cimarron. In 1982, Cadillac introduced the Cimarron, proudly marketed as the luxury car for the masses. With its promise of high-end features and prestige, it was supposed to bring Cadillac-level luxury to a more affordable price. Sounds good, right? Well, not exactly. When the Cimarron hit the streets, it was a huge letdown. The interior? Let's just say it was missing most of the luxury part and felt more like something you'd expect from a budget brand. If you're ready for more honest takes on cars, hit like and subscribe. Let's keep the conversation rolling. For $12,131, a lot back then, customers didn't get what they were hoping for. The car was slow, the build quality was questionable, and it really didn't live up to the Cadillac name. Cadillac took a huge hit to its reputation, and not surprisingly, the Cimarron was discontinued. It was supposed to be the car for the people, but ended up being the perfect example of a good-looking car to avoid. If you think the Cimarron was a letdown, just wait until you hear about the Chevrolet SSR 13, Reva G-Wiz. If you've never heard of it, don't worry, you're not alone. This tiny vehicle was designed by the Reva Electric Car Company in India, and it was sold as the Reva or G-Wiz in the UK. It never made it to the US for obvious reasons. The idea was to create an affordable, practical electric car. But what they came up with was more of a toy than a car. With a top speed of just 50 miles per hour, it's not exactly thrilling to drive. Inside, it was so cramped, calling it a four-seater felt more like a joke. And safety? Let's just say you'd be safer in a cardboard box. It had a claimed range of 50 miles, but in reality, you'd be lucky to get anywhere near that. Oh, and let's not forget its 6 lead-acid batteries, producing a whopping 15 horsepower. To put it simply, the G-Wiz was more of a four-wheeled scooter than a car. 12. Chevrolet SSR. In the early 2000s, Chevrolet decided to blend a pickup truck with a convertible roadster and called it the SSR, Super Sport Roadster. Produced from 2003 to 2006, the SSR had a 5.3-liter V8 engine, delivering 300 horsepower, and could hit 60 miles per hour in under 8 seconds. Not bad, right? By its final year, they bumped it up to a 6-liter V8, cranking out 390 horsepower and getting to 60 in about 5.3 seconds. But despite those decent numbers, the SSR didn't quite catch on. With only 24,000 sold in total, it seems like the world just wasn't ready for a truck that looked like a convertible muscle car. It was ahead of its time, or maybe just a little too confused. A pickup that tried to be sporty, but ended up being neither here nor there. 11. Chrysler Crossfire. The Crossfire is one of the most curiously proportioned cars ever, but that's not why it's on this list. We get what Chrysler was going for since it came along when retro was the hottest design trend. The Crossfire also promised so much. An engine in the front, 2 seats in the middle, and all the power going to the rear axle. Sounds sporty, right? But in reality, it didn't live up to the hype. It was built on an outdated platform with a heavy, naturally aspirated 3.2-liter V6 engine borrowed from Mercedes. That engine only made 215 horsepower and 229 pound-feet of torque, and it didn't even rev high to make up for it. For a car that wasn't exactly lightweight, those numbers didn't impress anyone. The top speed was limited to 155 miles per hour, but you had to have the patience of a monk to get there. Inside, the Crossfire didn't impress either. The plastic trim tried to look like metal, but didn't fool anyone, and over time, the paint faded. The interior had cheap materials, with a basic air conditioning unit that felt like something you'd find in a kid's rental cart at the mall. Disappointed much? The list only gets worse from here. 10. 1985 Yugo GV. Created by the same guy who gave us the Bricklin, the 1985 Yugo GV was meant to be the cheapest car in the US, but while it was cheap, it was also awful. Everything about it was a disaster. The engine gave up easily, the electrical system liked to burn itself out, and random parts would fall off for no reason. People called it the Mona Lisa of bad cars, a true masterpiece of failure. It had a tiny 5-gallon gas tank and was imported from Yugoslavia for $4,000. But in reality, it felt like it was worth more like $400. Inside, the Yugo was filled with cheap plastic, and nothing about it felt solid or safe. Usually, if a car fails at luxury, it makes up for it with performance or charm, but not the Yugo. It drove terribly, the steering was horrible, and the handling, non-existent. The question was simple: Yugo or no-go? And America answered loud and clear: definitely no-go. 9. Maserati Biturbo. In the 50s and 60s, Maserati built sleek, sexy race cars. Then came the 80s, and someone at Maserati said, let's build something cheaper. And that's how Biturbo was born. At first glance, it was a stunner. Sharp design, plush interior, and the first production car to come with twin turbos. It sounded like a winning combo, but under the hood, chaos. The engine leaked. Early models had no intercoolers and still used carburetors. Basically, performance sabotage. The fuse boxes were unreliable, interior panels cracked, and the overall build quality felt rushed. It was like a designer suit held together with duct tape. Buyers were impressed, until their cars broke down. But Maserati didn't give up. They corrected these problems and ultimately built it into a marvelous special edition called Cimarron. 8. Chrysler PT Cruiser Convertible. The Chrysler PT Cruiser was Chrysler's attempt at a quirky hot rod, and let's just say, it didn't quite hit the mark. In the late 90s, Chrysler was struggling, partnered with Mercedes, trying to make a comeback. The PT Cruiser, with its personal transport concept, was supposed to be stylish and functional, but the design was a bit off. It had a taller roof, large windows, and a more upright stance that didn't scream cool like the designers hoped. The convertible version of the PT Cruiser might have seemed like a good idea at the time, but it didn't quite deliver. It was marketed as a fun, retro ride, but to most, it looked more like something Grandma and Grandpa would drive to Thanksgiving dinner. 7. Chevrolet Citation. With a nameplate like the Citation, it's a wonder that this nameplate failed. Introduced as a compact car to compete with popular Japanese models, the Citation was rushed to market, and it showed. From the beginning, it seemed like the car was doomed. GM even tricked car magazines into praising it by giving them modified versions without the serious torque steer issues. But when regular customers got their hands on it, the reality was much different. The Citation's build quality was terrible. Rattling interiors, broken knobs, and cheap materials made it feel more like a budget car than anything else. Performance wasn't much better. Lethargic acceleration, lackluster handling, and a rough ride made it a tough drive. And don't get me started on the noise. Exterior sounds flooded the cabin, making it feel like you were driving a tin can. Despite the hype, by the third year, sales began to drop. By 1985, the Citation was officially off the market. 6. 1958 Ford Edsel. The 1958 Ford Edsel is often remembered as one of the biggest flops in automotive history. Ford introduced it in 1957 with high hopes, thinking it would fill a gap between their regular Ford and Mercury brands. Unfortunately, the timing couldn't have been worse. coming right at the start of a recession. Add in its controversial design, and it's easy to see why the Edsel didn't take off. One of the Edsel's most famous features was its horse-collared grille, which many found ugly and over the top. Critics called it the toilet seat grille, and it became the car's most mocked feature. But believe it or not, that wasn't the main reason it failed. The real issue was poor planning. The Edsel was meant to be a new, innovative brand, but it ended up overlapping with Ford's existing models, confusing consumers. Despite its failure, the Edsel wasn't a total disaster. It introduced a few innovations, like warning lights for oil, water, and the parking brake. Sadly, Ford discontinued it after just 2 years. 5. Chevrolet Corvair. Chevrolet is one of the most respected car brands in America, known for making great vehicles. But even the best make mistakes, and the Chevrolet Corvair was one of their biggest. It was one of the only American cars with a rear engine, which was meant to be bold and different. But instead of standing out for the right reasons, it became famous for all the wrong ones. The idea was to offer a sleek, modern alternative to the usual front-engine sedans. But the rear engine caused major problems. At high speeds, the car was hard to handle, especially around curves. The weight was all in the back, throwing off the balance and making it unsafe. Drivers were shocked by how unstable it felt, and accidents happened. To make things worse, the Corvair also suffered from overheating and regular mechanical issues. It lacked key safety features, and crash test results were far from reassuring. People lost trust quickly. Chevrolet tried to fix things with recalls and redesigns, but the damage was done. Sales dropped fast, and by the end of the 1960s, production stopped. All right, get ready for the next one because it's one of the weirdest cars ever made. 4. Horsey Horseless, 1899. Meet the Horsey Horseless, a car from 1899 that sounds like a bad joke. And honestly, kind of was. If the name wasn't strange enough, wait until you hear what it looked like. Someone thought it would be a great idea to stick a big wooden horse head on the front of the car. Yes, you read that right. A wooden horse head on a car. The idea? To make the car look like a normal horse and carriage so that real horses on the road wouldn't get scared. It was supposed to blend in, but instead of blending in, it just confused everyone, including the horses. It was basically a regular buggy with a fake horse head glued to the front, and it looked ridiculous. The creator thought he was being clever, maybe even funny, but the whole thing turned into a joke. It never caught on, and thank goodness for that. The Horsey Horseless never made it to the modern era, and we're all better off because of it. Imagine if cars still had fake horse heads today. 3. 1970, AMC Gremlin. Launched on April Fool's Day in 1970, the Gremlin certainly lived up to the prank. AMC was known for creating some not-so-great cars, but the Gremlin is often considered the worst of the bunch. This small, rust-prone vehicle was a gas guzzler, drinking fuel like a car several times its size. It handled poorly, the engine choked on emissions controls, and the flip-up rear window often snapped off in your hands. As for the design, critics joked it looked like two different cars, long in the front, stubby in the back. The result? Awkward, clunky, and totally unbalanced. A true disaster from bumper to bumper. AMC tried to create a subcompact before Ford or GM could, but the Gremlin ended up being more of a joke. Still, it hung around until 1978, and some people actually find them charming today. You don't see many on the road now, though, except maybe in a few collectors' garages. Remember the commercials? Hey lady, where's the back half of your car? Classic. 2. Pontiac Aztek. Would it be a worst cars list without the Pontiac Aztek? We think not. Produced from 2001 to 2005, this vehicle earned a permanent spot for being one of the ugliest cars ever made. It also played a big role in the downfall of the Pontiac brand. The Aztek was supposed to attract both young buyers and families, aiming to be fun and practical, cooler than a minivan, yet still spacious. The problem? It missed the mark in every way. The design was awkward, with a short hood, boxy shape, and a rear end that looked like it was designed by accident. The overuse of gray plastic didn't help either. It was meant to be a crossover, but instead, it felt like a minivan. Even though Pontiac hoped the Aztek would be a hit, it was clear the car wasn't going to last. Its weird look and lack of appeal helped seal Pontiac's fate, with the brand disappearing just 5 years after the Aztek's production ended. What a disaster! 1. Ford Pinto, and the title of the worst car in Ford's history surely belongs to the Ford Pinto. Now, don't get us wrong, it wasn't a bad car in many ways. It was affordable, small, and had that classic two-door hatchback vibe. The problem? The Pinto had a slight, explosive tendency. It liked to burst into flames after rear-end collisions. Well, the fuel tank was poorly placed, making it easy for the car to catch fire. Ford knew about the issue, but decided it was cheaper to pay for potential lawsuits than to fix the problem. Yes, really. This decision made headlines and gave birth to the infamous Ford Pinto memo, where they calculated that paying $50 million in settlements was more cost-effective than spending $121 million to reinforce the rear end. Talk about bad math. Eventually, Ford did issue a recall to add a protective shield to the Pinto, but the damage to its reputation was done. So, if you ever spot one at a used car lot, do yourself a favor and steer clear unless you're looking for a firework of a car. Which car do you think truly deserves the title of the worst ever made? Drop your pick in the comments below. Like, share, and subscribe with notifications on so you don't miss more deep dives into car disasters. And if you're still wondering how these disasters even run, our last video explains how an engine works in just 5 minutes. Tap the video on your screen and we'll see you there.